Hi everyone. So in this class I want to discuss with you regarding income tax topic, that is residential status of an individual. Actually in the previous lecture I discussed with you all the rules regarding residential status of an individual person. So how to determine residential status of an individual person and what are the rules regarding those under Income Tax Act 1961. These all I discussed in the previous lecture 1. So in this lecture 2, I want to discuss with you one problem and how to solve it and how to determine residential status of one individual person. Let us go into the lecture now. So here the question is, so let us discuss the question so that we will determine what actually is the residential status of that particular individual person. So let me read the question and let me discuss the question and let me solve it so that you will understand how actually we can determine residential status of one individual person. You can look into the question. Sri Amarendra Naidu. So Amarendra Naidu is one individual person, a citizen of India. He actually lived in India and he actually was a citizen of India. He left to Japan. So he went to Japan on 2nd February 2024. So that date is very important. When actually he is leaving our India and he is going to Japan. The date is very important. He went to Japan on 2nd February 2024. Determine his residential status as resident or non-resident. So we have to determine what actually is the residential status of that particular person. So let us discuss how to solve it, how to determine the residential status. Actually, before determining the residential status, you must know what is assessment year and what is previous year at present. So at present, our assessment year is 1st April 2024 to 31st March 2025. You can see in the solution I have given that. So assessment year is starting from 1st April 2024 to ending on 31st March 2025. That is the assessment year, 12 months period. So assessment year means in which actually tax is imposed on that particular person. Next, what is a previous year? PY means previous year. So previous year is just before 12 months period of assessment year. So previous year I have given that also. PY means previous year. It is starting from 1st April 2023 to 31st March 2024. That is our present previous year. So we have to determine what is the residential status of Amarendra Naidu during the previous year period. How many days he stayed during the previous year period. So depending upon that, we will apply the rules and we will determine his residential status. So what is our previous year? It is starting from 1st April 2023 and ending on 31st March 2024. So during this period, how many days he stayed in India? That is very important. So let us see how many days he stayed in India. Actually, when he left to Japan on 2nd February 2024. So our year is starting, our previous year is starting from 1st April 2023. He was in India only. Okay, during that period he was in India only. So April, you can see down I have given, I mentioned there. 2023 April, full 30 days he was in India only. In April we have 30 days. So during 30 days period he was in India only. So 30 days completely he stayed in India. After April, May. So May 31 days are there. So 31 days he was in India only. He did not go anywhere. Next June 2023. In June month we have 30 days. So he stayed in India. Because when he left to Japan, 2nd February 2024. So till that period he was in India only. He stayed in India only. So July 31 days also he stayed in India. Next August. In August month we have in total 31 days. So during those August 31 days he was in India only again. So I took August 31 days. September month. In September month also he stayed in India. He did not go anywhere. And 30 days. October 31 days. He stayed in India only in the month of October also. And November 2023. He stayed completely all days. 30 days in November month in India only. So November 30 days I took. You can see, you can watch there. Okay. So December 31 days he stayed in India only. So next after December 2023, next month is January 2024. So during that period, in the month of January, he stayed 31 days in India. He did not go anywhere. And next after that, next month is February 2024. So during that period, if we observe the date when he left to Japan on 2nd February 2024. Now we are in February month 2024 only. So he stayed till first 2 days in India in the month of February. So in second February, we don't know when he actually left. So either evening or night. So we will assume that he stayed in India only second in the evening or in the night he left. So here February month 2 days we took. January 31 days in the month of 2000 in the year of 2024. January 31 days he stayed. In the month of February 2 days he stayed in India. So later he was not in India. And our previous year is ending on 31st March 2024. It is starting from 2023 April onwards, ending on 31st March 2024. So during this 1 year period, from April to February 2nd, he was in India only. Later, he was not in India. He left to Japan. He went to Japan. Okay. So till that period, from April 2023 to February 2nd, 2024. In total, how many days? 308 days. So, he was in India for 308 days during the previous year period. Is it clear for everyone? Hope this is clear for everyone. So, if you observe all the months and days, how many he stayed in India, so you will understand it. And throughout during the period of previous year, he stayed for 308 days in India. Okay. We understood that he stayed for 308 days during the previous year period. Let us apply the rules. You know all basic conditions and additional conditions. Actually, what are the basic conditions? There are two basic conditions to determine residential status of an individual. I discussed in the previous lecture 1. So, what are those two conditions? Why we have to apply these two conditions? If we apply these two basic conditions, we can determine whether he is resident or non-resident. Okay, so if you apply basic conditions, we can decide whether he is a resident or non-resident. Then what are those conditions? What are those basic conditions? You can see right side. You can see right side, I have given those basic conditions. Okay. So, I will read first of all what actually I have given there. You can see that. You can listen that and you can see that. Basic conditions. An individual is considered as a resident in the previous year if he satisfies one or both of the following basic conditions. If he does not satisfy at least any one of the basic conditions, he is called a non-resident. So I told you just now, if we want to determine whether he is a resident or non-resident, we have to apply basic conditions. So if we apply basic conditions, there are two basic conditions actually. So if we apply basic conditions, we can decide whether he is a resident or non-resident. How? How we can decide? If he satisfies, we have two basic conditions, no? If he satisfies at least one basic condition or two, then we can call him as a resident. If he satisfies any one basic conditions, he is known as resident. If he satisfies both basic conditions, then also we can call him as a resident. If he is not satisfying any one of the basic condition, then we will call him as a non-resident. So if you want to call him as a resident, he must satisfy at least one basic condition. Any one, either first one or second one. Then we can call him as a resident. If he is not satisfying at least one condition, okay, then we can call him as a non-resident. If he is non-resident, then we need not to apply additional conditions. That's final. He is a non-resident. That's all. We need not to apply additional conditions. Okay. So, suppose he is a resident. Then we have to apply additional conditions also. And we have to go further. And we have to determine whether he is resident, ordinary resident or resident but not ordinary resident. So, once he is non-resident, we will stop the problem here itself. That's over. If he is resident, again we have to go further and we have to determine whether he is a resident and ordinary resident or resident but not ordinary resident. Okay, we have to determine that by applying additional conditions. So let us see what are the basic conditions and let us determine whether he is a resident or non-resident. So you can see the right side I have given basic conditions. Two basic conditions are there. I will read it. You can look into that. First one, he is in India in the relevant previous year for a minimum period of 182 days. So he has to, actually he must be in India during the previous year period. For how many days? 182 days. He has to stay in India compulsorily during the previous year period for 182 days. That is the first condition. You just apply for our problem. How many days he stayed? Amarendra Naidu stayed during the previous year period 308 days. So he is satisfying first condition. If one individual person stays in India during the previous year period for a minimum days of 182 days, then first condition is satisfied. He stayed more than that. Okay, so he is satisfying first condition. Once he satisfies one condition, we can call him as a resident. Here, first one, he is satisfying. So he became resident actually. And let us see second one also. He is satisfying second one also actually. But anyhow, already we determined as a resident because he is satisfying one condition. So what is the second condition here? He is in India for a period of 60 days or more during the relevant previous year. So in relevant previous year, he stayed for 308 days. If he stays if he is staying for 60 days, okay, then second one also he is satisfying. Okay, so actually he has to stay in India during the previous year period for a period of 60 days. He has to stay in India during the previous year for how many days? 60 days. And one more condition also there in second one. So 60 days he is satisfying. He was in India for 308 days during the previous year. 60 days he is satisfying. And what is the next one? And okay, so one more is added to that in second condition. What is that? 365 days or ORR, that is ORR more during the 4 years preceding to the relevant previous year. So previous year is 1st April 2023 to 31st March 2024. Before that, okay, preceding to the previous year means before previous year, 4 years period will be there. Before that, before previous year, in 4 years period, he must be in India for 365 days. That is the next one. In second one, there are two again. He has to be in India for 60 days during the previous year, that he is satisfying, and 365 days he must stay in India for how many days? For 4 years period during the previous year, during preceding to the previous year. Okay, so before previous year, there will be 4 years period. Before previous year, during 4 years period, he must be in India for 365 days. So he did not go anywhere, no. Only during the previous year in the month of February, on second date, he left to Japan. Before that, he was in India only, completely, not 365 days. For 4 years, he was in India only. Okay. So before previous year, during 4 years period. before the previous year during 4 years period. He must be for 365 days in India. He stayed completely 4 years. Okay, he was in India during the previous year for more than 60 days. He stayed for 308 days, no more than 60 days. And he is satisfying that 365 days condition also. So, second one also is satisfying. He is satisfying first condition, that 182 days. And second condition also is satisfying. If he satisfies one condition, then we can determine that he is a resident. But here he is satisfying both. If he satisfies both also, he is a resident. Okay. So that is why I have given down note. He is satisfying both the basic conditions. Hence he is known as resident. We determine that he is a resident. Once he is a resident, we have to again determine whether he is resident or resident and ordinary resident, or resident but not ordinary resident. So to determine that status, we have to apply additional conditions. Actually in this problem they asked whether he is a resident or non-resident, but here we will go for further and we will discuss whether he is resident and ordinary resident or not ordinary resident also. You can see that also. So let me discuss what are the additional conditions. Why we have to apply additional conditions? Once if we decide that he is a resident by applying basic conditions, then compulsorily we have to apply additional conditions to determine whether he is a resident and ordinary resident or resident but not ordinary resident. To determine that status, additional conditions are must. Let us discuss what are the additional conditions now. There are two additional conditions again. So these are all actually basic and additional conditions. Here I am discussing for general category assessee. Okay. So for special category assessees, additional conditions and these all are same. Basic conditions are different for special category assessees. But here that person Amarinder Naidu is general category assessee only. That is why basic conditions whatever I discussed with you, those we applied, and additional conditions also two are there that we will apply to determine whether he is a resident and ordinary resident or resident but not ordinary resident. Let me discuss. So here first you can see in the middle of that paragraph. So here I will read first so that you will understand in a better way. For both special and general category of persons, additional conditions are same. Additional conditions are to be applied if the residential status of an individual is resident. So this will be applied only if he is resident. If he is non-resident, no need to apply this all. Okay. So problem over there itself. And next, what are the additional conditions? Two are there actually. First one is he has been resident in India for 2 years out of 10 previous years preceding to the relevant previous year. So we have previous year period. What is our present previous year? 1st April 2023 to 31st March 2024. Okay. So before that previous year period, there will be, before the previous year period, there will be 10 years period before that. So during 10 years period, during the previous, actually before previous year there will be 10 years period. So during those 10 years which are preceding to the relevant previous year, during that period he must be in India for 2 years out of those 10 years period. So actually 10 years period must be before the previous year. So previous year will be, present previous year is what, 1st April 2023 and 31st March 2024. So before that 10 years period, during that period he must be in India for how many years? 2 years. That is the first one. So if we apply this for our problem, he did not go anywhere before that period. And only during the previous year he went to Japan on 2nd February 2024. Before that he was in India only. He was a citizen of India. So he is satisfying first condition. Not 2 out of 10 years. He was in India for 10 out of 10 years. He is satisfying first one. And what is the second one? He has been in India for a period of 730 days or more during the past 7 years preceding to the relevant previous year. So our previous year, present previous year, before that, during 7 years period, he must be in India for how many days? 730 days. So he actually stayed completely 7 years in India only, because he did not go anywhere, because he was citizen of India. Only during the previous year period on 2nd February 2024 he went to Japan. Before that he stayed in India. Completely 7 years he stayed in India. So he is satisfying second condition also. So two conditions, two additional conditions he is satisfying. Then what we can decide now? So if he satisfies two additional conditions, then only we can call him as a resident and ordinary resident. If he satisfies one conditions or none, then we will call him as a resident but not ordinary resident. Okay. So if we want to call him as a resident and ordinary resident, he must satisfy two additional conditions. So here in our problem, he is satisfying both additional conditions. So we can call him as a resident and ordinary resident. So you can see, I'll read a note. If an individual satisfies both the additional conditions, then he will be treated as a resident and ordinary resident. He has to satisfy two additional conditions, then only we will call him as a resident and ordinary resident. I am going to read next one. If an individual satisfies any one of the two conditions or none of the additional conditions, then he will be treated as resident but not ordinary resident. So if he satisfies one condition or none, then we will call him as a resident but not ordinary resident. But here in our problem, Amarendra Naidu is satisfying both the additional conditions, so that we can call him as a resident and ordinary resident. Okay, that is our final answer. So here he is satisfying both the additional conditions, hence he is known as what? Resident and ordinarily resident. This is our answer. Hope this is clear for everyone. If you want to learn other problems in residential status, you can watch my next lecture. Okay, so hope you understood. Thanks for watching. Like the video, share the video and subscribe the channel. Thank you.